In a quiet village nestled on the far edge of Kirkwood, the day began with golden sunlight filtering gently through the dense, dew-kissed canopy. The village had always lived in harmony with the wild that surrounded it, but nothing could have prepared the residents for what was about to unfold. Inside one modest cottage where vines crept along the windows and the smell of morning tea lingered in the air, Clara Mitchell was beginning her day as she always did, calmly with a cup of warm rooibos in hand, enjoying the symphony of chirping, birds and distant rustling leaves. As steam curled from her mug and she stirred in a spoonful of honey, a peculiar sound broke through the peaceful ambiance. It was faint at first, almost indistinct, like claws brushing against wood. Clara paused, listening carefully. Again, a soft scraping noise, deliberate and steady, came from the front porch. She set her cup down and moved to the door, heart beating just a little faster, her instincts stirred by something unusual in the air. When she stepped outside, barefoot and wrapped in her warm shawl, the morning mist was still thick over the earth. And there, barely visible at first, emerged a shape from the fog, massive, powerful, majestic. Clara gasped. Not 10 feet from where she stood, a full-grown lioness stood silently in the haze. Her fur was matted with dew, her eyes steady, unwavering. But it wasn't the lioness's presence alone that stunned Clara into silence. It was what she carried. The lioness gently lowered her head and placed a small, frail lion cub onto the wooden porch. Then, without a sound, she stepped back, as if surrendering the child to the only hope it had left. The cub lay still except for the tremble of its tiny body. Its chest rose and fell with difficulty, each breath a struggle. One of its front paws was grotesquely swollen, the fur around it stained dark with dried blood and dirt. It made no attempt to move, only let out a faint, wheezing groan, so soft that Clara had to lean in to hear it. The lioness remained still just a few meters away, her eyes never leaving the cub. There was no aggression in her gaze, no warning, growl or defensive stance, only something deep, old, and impossibly human. Sorrow. Clara called out for her husband, panic beginning to override her awe. As he rushed to the doorway, his face went pale. Without wasting a second, Clara grabbed the phone and dialed the G. Keberha Wildlife Rescue Center, her voice trembling as she relayed the situation. While waiting for the rescue team to arrive, she took it upon herself to help. She fetched a clean towel, gently sliding it under the cub's frail body to give it some comfort, and began to fan it with a folded newspaper, trying to make breathing easier for the struggling animal. Despite Clara's movement, the lioness didn't move. She sat like a guardian, unmoving in the mist, her powerful frame relaxed but alert. Her presence was a paradox of majesty and humility, her eyes soft but intensely focused on every motion Clara made. When Clara looked directly at her, truly looked, she felt something stir within her, a buried memory, a forgotten warmth. She found herself walking closer, compelled not by bravery, but by recognition. And then it clicked. "I know who you are," Clara whispered under her breath, her voice trembling with disbelief. "You remember me, don't you? Nira?" For a moment, the lioness did not respond. Then, subtle, almost imperceptible, she tilted her head. Her ears moved slightly. Her gaze did not falter, but there was a shift, like a door opening without, a sound. Clara knelt, tears stinging her eyes, as she gently took a damp cloth and cleaned the dirt from the cub's wound. The tiny creature winced, but didn't resist. Blood oozed slowly from the injury, deep, jagged, likely from a hidden snare, or a sharp rock, and Clara's hands moved quickly, instinctively, as she applied pressure to stop the bleeding. Her fingers, trembling with emotion, fashioned a makeshift bandage. She placed a small pillow beneath the cub to ease the pressure on its limbs. The lioness, Nira, as Clara now knew for sure, took one cautious step forward. She sat just a few feet away now, close enough for Clara to hear her slow, steady breathing. Clara swallowed hard and looked into her eyes again. "Please," she murmured, "let me help your child. I promise I will do everything I can." The rescue team arrived, not long after. They worked with urgency and compassion, wrapping the cub in a thermal blanket and administering pain medication. As they carefully lifted it into the specialized vehicle, Naira rose to her feet. She followed silently until she reached the edge of the wooden fence, where she stopped. Something invisible kept her back, some ancient understanding of boundary and trust. A rescuer whispered to Clara, his voice filled with awe. "I've worked with wildlife for 20 years. I've never seen a lion act like this. It's like she's pleading." Clara's eyes welled with tears again. She had seen those eyes before, long ago. A memory broke through the surface of her mind like sunlight through clouds. Over a decade earlier, she had volunteered at Addo Elephant National Park. During one patrol, a team had stumbled upon a lion cub barely clinging to. Life trapped in an illegal snare, its body ravaged by blood loss and infection. That cub had been Nira. For 6 long months, Clara had nursed the little lion back from the edge of death. She fed her with a bottle, cleaned her infected wounds, stayed awake through countless nights, fearing she wouldn't survive till dawn. The bond they formed was more than temporary. It was a miracle. Clara had named her Naira, meaning light of resurrection, because that's what she had become, a creature reborn. When the day finally came for Naira to return to the wild, Clara had cried harder than she had in years, whispering a promise to never forget. She had never imagined she would see Naira again, much less at her doorstep, asking for help. Later, the rescue team scanned a small embedded tag on the cub's neck. What they discovered left everyone breathless. The cub was Nira's offspring. The lioness Clara had once saved had come back after all these years, entrusting her only child to the very hands that had once healed her. Clara broke down in tears. The rescue team stood in stunned silence, moved beyond words. It was as if nature itself had remembered a kindness and returned it. Over the next 3 days, the cub was given intensive medical care, antibiotics, IV fluids, and constant monitoring. Meanwhile, Nira remained outside Clara's home, never leaving the spot where she had last seen her cub. Whether the sun scorched the earth or the rain soaked her golden fur, she stayed. She refused food, only drinking the water Clara placed for her at dusk. Her eyes were fixed, unwavering, staring towards the house where her baby was being treated. At first, the villagers were terrified. But as the days passed, their fear gave way to respect, then empathy. People began to leave offerings, meat, blankets, water. No one got too close. It was understood, almost sacred. Naira wasn't just a wild animal anymore. She was something else, something ancient, emotional, sentient. On the 3rd night, Clara sat beside her old friend. She placed a wooden chair near where Naira lay and simply sat in silence, the moonlight casting silver shadows across the porch. "You still remember me, don't you, Naira?" she whispered. "I never forgot you. I never will." Naira didn't move much, but her ears twitched and her eyes half closed, peaceful. The next morning, the vet gave the news everyone had been praying for. The cub was out of danger. Its fever had broken, and it had begun to drink and even attempt small, wobbly steps. Clara asked if she could take the cub out to the yard just for a few minutes. She wrapped the little lion gently, brought it to the grass near the porch, and placed it softly down. Then she stepped back. Naira stood immediately. Her ears perked, her body tense, then relaxed, as the cub let out a soft cry. It limped forward, one paw still heavily bandaged, and looked up at its mother. Naira walked forward, lowered her massive head, and began to gently groom her cub, licking its face and ears, nuzzling it with the intensity only a mother could offer. She curled her head around its body protectively. The entire village stood in silence at the sight. Some wept openly. It was the most profound image of reunion they had ever seen. Clara stood on the porch, hands clasped over her heart, tears flowing freely. Naira looked up one last time. There was no roar, no growl, just a single glance. In it, Clara saw everything: memory, trust, love, and gratitude. Then, silently, Naira turned, guiding her cub slowly back into the misty forest that bordered the village. She didn't look back again, but she didn't need to. The story traveled quickly, from the local paper to major networks across South Africa. Social media erupted. Scientists were baffled. A team at the University of Cape Town launched a full study into what they named emotional memory behavior in African lions, citing Naira as the first known case. Clara was invited to Gakeberha television to share the story. The entire studio cried. BBC Africa sent a documentary crew to film Clara and the village, focusing on the extraordinary story of a lioness who remembered a human kindness. The local school painted a mural of Naira and her cub with the words, "Remember and trust." Children wrote letters to Naira, even though they knew she couldn't read them. Still, they insisted, she'll feel them in her heart. Clara planted a wildflower bush where Naira had sat for those 3 long days. She called it the waiting corner. Every morning she sat nearby with her tea, gazing out into the forest, as if expecting something. Then, one rainy morning, she noticed them. 2 sets of footprints in the mud near her fence. One large, one small. They came back. No one saw Naira, but Clara knew. From that day forward, once every month at the break of dawn, the footprints appeared again. She never told anyone, never posted pictures. She simply wrote down the dates in a private notebook. Each time, her heart whispered the same truth: love, memory, and trust cross all boundaries when they are real. And in the quiet heart of the African wild, a lioness still remembers. Thank you, dear friend, for staying until the end of this video. If you were touched by this story, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more incredible moments from the animal world to life. See you next time.